Stepmom lied that I had stolen the car behind her back, and so Dad kicked me out while I was bedridden after an accident. 2 years later, they wanted me at their vow renewal. So 2 years ago, I got into this terrible car accident. I got rear-ended by a truck whose driver was drunk, and it was pretty bad for me because I was left completely bedridden for 3 months. After that accident, I seriously couldn't move a muscle, even if I tried, because everything hurt so bad. So I was pretty busted up, but that didn't even seem to matter because my dad kicked me out of the house anyway. I was 18 years old back then and had taken the car out to practice, driving for my driver's license test, which was a few days away when I got into that accident. I hadn't even taken the car very far. I was in the neighborhood when it happened. I had explicitly asked for permission from my stepmom since my father had made it very clear that I needed to ask at least one parent before I took the car out in any situation. So I asked her since my dad was at work, and she had told me that I could take the car. But later on, she flipped the story around to make it seem like I was going out to visit my friends, and just to look cool, I had taken the car and snuck out without asking her. My dad chose to believe her, without even hearing my side story, and kicked me out. My stepmom had always been weird around me, but I had never expected her to lie to my dad about something like this, and get me kicked out of the house, because that was just extreme. She had been a part of my life ever since I was 4 years old, and my biological mother had never been in the picture. After giving birth to me, she just randomly decided that she did not want to be a mother anymore and signed away her parental rights. She and my dad were never married, so it was easier for her to leave, and my father was ready to accept the responsibility and raise me all on his own, so he never questioned it either. She had never tried to be a part of my life, and so, I was happy. Even my father started dating my stepmom when I was 4 years old, and after 3 years of dating, they got married. But by then, I had realized that my stepmother had no interest in being a mother to me. She was just my father's wife, nothing else. When I was a child, we did not get along particularly well, and she usually just avoided me, but as I grew older, we started getting along even less and would argue frequently. Even when the arguments were about petty things, she would take it to extreme levels, and then complain to my father about my terrible behavior, and he would always side with her, which was pretty frustrating because she was the one who picked fights with me unnecessarily. We were already not on good terms, and I was just happy that I was going to be going away to college in just a few months. But that never happened, and I ended up having to move in with my grandparents because my father did not want me anymore. It had nothing to do with money since my dad's pretty rich. He has a paper company of his own, and even apart from that, he had medical insurance for the entire family, and the car was also insured. So I know for a fact that it was not about money. The one thing that made him kick me out of the house was whatever my stepmom had told me, with regard to how the accident had taken place. She had cooked up and fed him some nonsensical story about how I had been planning on going out with my friends, and I wanted to look cool, which is why I had taken the car out without her permission. Apparently, she told him that she had gotten to know about it by eavesdropping on me, and she said that she had even told me not to do such things after hearing that conversation, but I had just ignored her and gone out of my way to do exactly that. This happened after the accident, and the doctors had said that I was going to be bedridden for the next couple of months until I healed enough to resume normal movement. So I was already suffering enough because of that and the pain of the accident, and then, to top it off, my stepmom had started making up stories about me to lie to my dad. For 1 week, we kept arguing back and forth about what the truth was, and eventually, I lost my cool, and I started screaming at her, and called her a lot of names. I accused her of being a liar and said that she was just jealous that she could not have my father all to herself, and I said that she was sick in the head for trying to accuse me of doing something that I hadn't even done, especially given my condition. I think that was pretty much the last straw for my father, and he decided to shift me to my grandparents' house, who was kind enough to take me in. I felt very upset that my father was kicking me out of the house when I was in such terrible shape, and I even told him that the fact that he was choosing my stepmom over me meant that I was never going to see him the same way again, and he said that I apparently needed to be disciplined and he couldn't keep hurting his wife, just because I did not know how to behave myself and wanted to be a brat. So it was very obvious to me that he had chosen his side, and he had decided to believe my stepmom's version of what had happened because he did not trust me. It was really heartbreaking for me, and after that, I made up my mind that I was never going to speak to him again. It was a very hard decision for me to make because right from my childhood, it had just been me and him. My stepmom had never really been part of my family, in my head. She had been there all along, but I never considered her a part of the family because I'm pretty sure that in her head, she did not consider me family either. However, after that decision that my father had made, I decided that neither of them was worthy enough of being called family, since that was a big word that came with a lot of responsibilities. My father had tried to be there for me initially, and I respected that, but in the end, he valued my stepmother a lot more than me. After I moved in with my grandparents, they were the ones who took care of me and even hired a full-time nurse to help me out. They were nice people, and I had always had a good relationship with them. The only reason I had not moved in with them earlier was just because I was still holding out hope that maybe my father would change eventually. But he did not. Tough luck for me. Anyway, they are good people who took care of me and made me feel really loved, since they could understand that I was going through a very bad phase of my life. They tried to get my father to visit me, but he kept coming up with excuses. Sometimes he was too busy and at other times, he was too tired from work. So for almost 2 months, he did not visit me even once after the accident, and after he had kicked me out and moved me to my grandparents' house. Eventually, even my grandparents got into a fight with him because of how he was behaving and said that it was not fair to me. So my father decided to tell them that he had no intention of getting back on good terms with me anytime soon, because apparently, my stepmom did not approve of me anymore and had given him an ultimatum to choose between her or me, and he had chosen her. He believed that I needed to learn to be a better person and get along with people, and until that happened, he could not see us having a relationship because he thought that I had been a very difficult child to deal with in recent times, and he could not put up with that kind of behavior anymore, for his own sake, and his wife's. So that was that, and after that, we have not spoken. My grandparents were the ones who sent me to college after I had recovered, and they have been there for me all along. 2 years have passed since then, and I'm going to graduate in 1 year now, so I've been trying to move on with my life and it has been difficult, but I have good friends and grandparents to be there for me, so it's relatively easier for me, I guess. Anyway, I hadn't heard anything from or about my parents in the past few years, and until recently, I had no intention of ever getting back at them or doing anything to disrupt their lives. I was living and doing just fine without him. But I guess my stepmom has serious mental problems because she reached out to me last week to tell me that she and my father were renewing their wedding vows in a couple of weeks and she wanted me to attend that event. I was very confused as to why she wanted me there, and I wrote back to her instantly, telling her that I was not going to be coming. But she told me that I absolutely had to be there because my father was going to reach out to me in a couple of days to ask me about it formally, and one of the major reasons that he wanted me to be there was because some of his business associates were going to be there as well, and they knew that he had a daughter since they had seen some family photos of his desk. And it would be very weird to explain to them why I was absent from such an event, and my father had been running on reaching out to me to make amends for the file. Anyway, she wanted me to just accept the invitation and put everything in the past. However, I was not ready to put anything behind me because it had just been 2 years, and I was never going to be able to forget the way that my dad had made me feel. So I ignored that message and tried to get on with my day, but then, a couple of hours after not getting a response from me, she decided to message me again, and this time, she said that she had always known that I was an ungrateful brat who did not know how to behave myself, and this time around, I was still trying to show how low I could go, especially when my dad was trying to make things right with me, even when I did not deserve it. She then threatened me and said that I could either be there, or I could give up any hopes of inheriting my father's business or money in the long run. And she said that she would make sure of it, which is what really pissed me off because she really thought that she could scare me with those cringe threats. That's when I finally blocked her because she got on my last nerve. Before this, I had just blocked them on social media, but I had not blocked their phone numbers because it just seemed unnecessary. However, after that message, I blocked both their phone numbers as well. And I thought that this was going to be the end of it, but even that was not enough, I guess. She reached out to me by writing an email to me and said that I absolutely had to accept the invitation because the renewal of the wedding vows was not just going to be an event for them, it was related to my father's work as well, and he desperately wanted me to be there. Even then, she could not have taken a nicer tone with me, especially when it was they who needed me. She still tried to threaten me into getting her way, and I decided that I had had enough. There was no need for me to run away from these things, and I finally decided to confront the situation by writing a post and attaching all the proof of the conversations that we had had so far. I also wrote about everything that had happened in the past and decided to call her and my father out on social media. I made it a public post and even tagged my dad and my stepmom in the post, along with a couple of his friends from work, whose names and social media profiles I could recognize. That was a deliberate move because I wanted his work friends and business associates to get to know what he had done to me in the past, since my stepmom had made it very obvious to me that the renewal of their wedding vows was going to be a business event for them as well. After the post, I did not expect anything to happen, but then, a day later, I received news from my grandparents that my father was devastated because apparently what I had done had led to a huge loss for them. They were going to have a merger with an office supplies company in a few months. It was just in the initial stages, but now it was probably getting called off because of my post. It was going to be a big deal for his company, but since I had tagged certain people in my post, word got around about what had happened to me, and my father's reputation obviously took a hit because he did not come off looking too good in that post. So now, the merger is in question because my father has been unable to get a response from anybody who was working with him so far, and he believes that it was because of the post that I had made. My grandparents think that what I did was probably not that good, and there was no reason for me to involve my father in all of this since it was my stepmother who was going out of her way to be mean to me. And now, I feel kind of guilty as well. So Ida for making a post to call out my father and my stepmom publicly? Update 1. Hi, so it's been a couple of days since my original post, and I decided to take my post attacking my parents down. Also, some of you have been asking me why I was referring to my dad and my stepmom as my parents, since it's very obvious that I don't get along well with either of them. Well, my dad is obviously an actual biological parent to me, and even though I don't really like my stepmother, I've known her since I was a child, and so, I've gotten used to calling them my parents. I don't know how to put it any other way either. It's nothing that deep, so it's not a big deal. Anyway, coming back to what I did, I took that post down and I unblocked my father, so I could reach out to him. Most people in the comment section believe that I did not owe anybody any apology, but I felt like I could at least just say that I did not mean for something so bad to happen since I had absolutely no idea about the merger and how big it could have proven to be for his business. I did not exactly apologize, I just kind of justified myself and told him that everything that had happened 2 years back was something that still stayed with me and I haven't been able to completely move on from that. So getting to know that he was going to invite me to an event and try to make amends with me, but even that was just because he wanted to pretend everything with his family was normal in front of his business associates, that was just hurtful. And the way that my stepmom had been behaving with me had been very insulting, which is what pissed me off, and that's why I made that post, so I put it all in one text and I sent that to him. I didn't really expect him to reply to that because I knew that he was going to be very pissed off with whatever had happened, but then he did reply to me, and he just told me that it was fine, he deserved this after everything that he had done, and he did not blame me for the way that I had reacted. That was a pretty weird reaction, and so, I decided to speak to my grandparents about it because I thought that maybe they would know why he seemed to be acting so strange, because I had definitely expected him to at least be pissed off and berate me for what I had done, but nothing of the sort had happened. So when I asked my grandparents about this, they told me that apparently, he had been regretting his actions for a really long time now, and it just all came to a head when I put up that post. They said that they had already discussed these things with my father recently before I had sent that text to him, and he had expressed how much he regretted kicking me out back then. It had been his own personal choice to do that, but he claimed that he had just been confused about what to do. My stepmother always made it sound very convincing whenever she told him about how bratty and awful my behavior was, and he had bought it, but then, he had started doubting himself, and whatever my stepmom would tell him a couple of weeks after he had kicked me out. He had just never been able to gather the courage to set things right with me, and he knew that he deserved this, which is why he did not try to retaliate or even argue with me when I sent him that text. They also explained to me that he had genuinely wanted to invite me to the renewal of their wedding vows, and it was not just meant to impress his business associates as my stepmother had told me. In fact, his business associates were not even invited to the event, it was a very close and intimate thing, so he did not know why she would say such a thing. Probably just to create a rift between my dad and me, I never really understood her reasons. But anyway, he had seen the screenshots that I had posted and had realized that my stepmother had a problem with lies and they had hit a rough patch as well. He hadn't heard back from the guys, whom he was supposed to have the merger with yet, so he's assuming that it's been called off, and he's going to receive a formal email or something about it later on. But for now, his personal life is in shambles, and that's what he's trying to deal with. Now, after having that discussion with my grandparents, I really don't know how to feel. They told me that they were proud of me for doing the right thing and reaching out to him, even if it was not to apologize, because even my grandparents don't think that apology is necessary in the scenario since there was some misunderstanding that had been created because of my stepmother and I had just reacted any other person in my place. But at least I had the courtesy to reach out to him and try to make things right with him, so they appreciate that. However, I just don't know how to feel about the situation with my dad and me anymore. Things have been really bad for the past 2 years between us, and before, when I did not have any contact with him, I honestly found it easier to deal with my emotions, but now, I just don't know how to feel about any of this. Update 2. Hey, so a lot of the comments on my previous update told me that I should not reach out to my father again, and I should stay no contact with him. I don't know about you guys, but I truly don't think that that's the right way to go. Anyway, I've already broken the no contact thing by reaching out to him after that post, so I don't think I can exactly go back all of a sudden. There are so many unresolved issues and unanswered questions that I still have, I don't think I can go back to having no contact with him so soon. Maybe after having at least just one discussion with him to get the closure that I need, or whatever, maybe after that. But until that happens, I really don't think that what you guys are suggesting is even feasible for me. I don't care if you people call me weak or stupid, I know what my heart wants, and I know what's good for me. So trust me, I got this. Anyway, I spoke to my grandparents about the way that I was feeling, and I told them that I thought that it would be good for us to sit down and have a conversation with each other. And they said that they thought that it would be a good idea as well, and are in the process of talking to my father and arranging for us to meet. From what I know, things are not going too well between him and my stepmom so far, and they might be headed for a divorce. I'm not sure about that yet, but it'll be pretty funny if that happens because they were just about to renew their vows and now, that's not going to happen, and instead, they might end up separating. Talk about irony. But coming back to what my grandparents told me, they have been in touch with my father, and they are also trying to rebuild their relationship with their son because my grandparents don't have their entire life ahead of them as I do, they have limited time and they have to make the most of it. So I can understand why they want to make things right with him. Besides, it seems to me that my dad is genuinely apologetic for everything that has happened in the past because my grandparents told me that he has been pretty devastated and doesn't even seem to care about the merger falling through. All he talks about is how he screwed up as a father and that he failed me. And I guess I can see where he's coming from. I don't think I've ever tried to think about things from his point of view. My grandparents have told me that they are going to speak to him and let me know when we can meet, and I just hope that it goes well. Update 3. Hello. So 2 days ago, I finally met my father after 2 years of having no contact with him. We met at my grandparents' house and it was really emotional. I still can't believe that. I finally got to sit down and talk to him about everything that had been bothering me and got the answers to the questions that I had been thinking about for so long. He started off by apologizing to me for what he had put me through and said that he knew that he had failed as a father and did not even deserve to be sitting in the same room as me, since I had turned out to be a better person than he had ever imagined, and he had no role to play in any of it, which I don't think it's true, to be honest. He was the one who had raised me, pretty much single-handedly, because when I was younger, my stepmother just kept avoiding me. Our relationship only went sour as I grew older and things went down with my stepmom, but before that, he had always been a great father to me. But anyway, he acknowledged that he had made a lot of mistakes, and the worst of them was trusting my stepmother over me. He explained that he had just assumed that she was telling the truth because she was older, and he never thought that she would lie to him because when it was just the two of them, she was very clever at manipulating him, and I'll have to admit, she was definitely a smooth talker. He told me that he had been manipulated, and he was honestly so confused about who was telling the truth, and whom to trust that he ended up making the wrong call, and even after he had started doubting himself, he did not have the courage to face his mistakes and talk to me. And that's why he had not reached out to me after he kicked me out of the house. He said that he was truly apologetic for all of it from the bottom of his heart, and now, it was up to me whether I wanted to accept that apology and work on our relationship or not. He told me that even if I decided not to forgive him and go back to having no contact, he would be fine with it because he knew that he had screwed up in a colossal way, and he had to be fine with whatever decision I made. I also learned from him that he and my stepmom were headed for a divorce and she had moved out of the house already. After seeing those screenshots that she had lied to me about why he wanted to invite me to the vow renewal, he confronted me about what she had told me, and they ended up in a big fight. She admitted to everything, even lying 2 years ago, about what had happened with the car and why I had that accident. After that, there was obviously no way that he could be with her anymore, so he asked her to leave and filed for a divorce. It was very difficult for me to come to a decision right then and there, so I told him that I would need some time to think about things. And right now, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to ascertain whether I should give him a second chance or not. I know most people would say that I shouldn't, but ultimately, he's my father and only I can make the right decision. Besides, I am an adult now, and I don't really need to depend on him for anything, and he doesn't need to rely on me either. After I graduate from college, I'm going to get my own job and be financially independent. So that part is completely out of the equation here, just in case anybody wanted to accuse him of trying to make things right with me, just because he wanted to be able to depend on me after he retired, since that seems to be a common argument here. I don't think that's going to be the case because his business is doing pretty well, with or without the merger. Even after his reputation took a hit, his numbers and sales did not. So, I think that speaks for itself. It's a purely emotional relationship between a father and a daughter, and now, I have to decide whether I want to work on that relationship or not. I'm leaning towards yes because he is the only parent I have ever had, and even though the past few years have been bad, I can't let that get in the way of everything that he has done right. But I'm still not sure yet, which is why I'm posting it here to see what people think. I genuinely want to make things right and have a real shot at having a normal family, and this is my only chance. So please keep that in mind before making any comments, that I really want things to work out. Update 4. So I decided that I'm going to try and work on my relationship with my father. We are starting therapy together next week. I hope that it works out for us. We are also going to try and rebuild our relationship by trying to actually talk to each other and communicate often. My grandparents are really happy about it and I feel hopeful for the future, honestly. I'm genuinely ready to put everything in the past and move on.